Cult- Culture is an important part of everyone's lives, whether they think it or not. Culture shapes the way we think and act. It's easy to think culture simply is where we are born and from, but it can also be where you were born, when you were born, where you went to school, or in my case, where you work. A culture that has shaped me is the culture of being a healthcare worker. Though it isn't the first thing you think of when you think of culture, it still has its own customs and traditions like any other culture. And like any other culture, it has shaped my life. To know more about my culture, it's important to know about my background in the culture. I always wanted to be in healthcare since I was a little kid. I would watch shows like Untold Stories of the ER, even though I was way too young to be watching those, and I was just always interested. But I didn't start my healthcare journey until I was 17 years old when I got my CNA through high school. And I started working as a CNA in 2020 at 18 years old through the pandemic. Throughout my time as a CNA, I worked on an orthopedics unit, a pediatric unit, and worked on a cardiac step down at Methodist as well. Throughout my time at OSF, I also did a lot of things behind the scenes. I did meetings with Joint Commission to talk about the safety of my floor, and I also was on unit council to talk about policies to make things go smoother. I also wanted to move forward in my healthcare journey, so I did one semester of nursing school and decided it wasn't for me. But I wasn't sure how to go forward from there until in 2023 I saw ads for a respiratory therapy program. I started that in 2023 and now I am an RTA at OSF. Throughout my time as a healthcare worker, I've learned many traditions and common practices. One is pretty face value, and that is scrubs. If you watch any medical TV show, you will notice that all of them are wearing scrubs. There are multiple reasons why everybody wears scrubs in healthcare. One of them is uniformity. It is easier to pick out staff when they are all wearing scrubs. And if there is color coding, it's even easier to know who is what. Another function of scrubs is the actual function of the scrubs themselves. SDH Medical states that scrubs are made with a flexible moisture wicking material. This promotes flexibility on the floor when you're doing things like bending over or lifting people. And it also avoids staining of bodily fluids on your scrubs. Scrubs that are hospital provided, such as in the OR, play an important part of infection prevention as they don't leave the hospital, and that is the original reason they were introduced in the 1940s. Another practice many don't know is the language we use. If you were to open up a doctor's notes and charts, you probably wouldn't be able to read it, as doctors and other healthcare professionals use a lot of abbreviations. Abbreviations are used to make things easier and make things quicker to relay messages. Madison Memorial Hospital gives an example with QID, which means 4 times a day. TID would mean 3 times a day. Even though it is easy and quick, it is not always very practical, because according to PubMed, they did a study that showed surgeons could only correctly identify 57% of abbreviations used. There are also standard phrases everyone in healthcare knows. Washington State Hospital Association gives an example of this with the most common one, which is a code blue. This means cardiac arrest. It is a signal to all disciplines taking care of the patient to go to the room. A step below that is a rapid response, and this means they might need backup from other disciplines such as respiratory, but it's not as emergent. And then I have a example here what a code blue would kind of look like.
This holiday season, remember those who lost loved ones and avoid gathering indoors so you don't lose any of yours.
We'll take a cup of kindness yet for all mankind.
Wear a mask and spread hope, not COVID.
Phrases can also differ from hospital to hospital. Some hospitals also use plain language codes. The Joint Commission gives an example of this as their medical alert or cardiac arrest would be used instead of code blue. And the wording differs, but the message is the same. There are a lot of lessons that I have learned about communication and myself through healthcare. I learned a lot about group communication. I learned that there is no small role when it comes to taking care of patients. There are many disciplines, such as housekeeping and nursing, that are just as important as one another. One role going south can make the whole patient care go awry. It's important to have open communication with everybody in the healthcare team to make things go smooth. It is also important to talk to your patient and practice active listening. That means listening and not just hearing. And that means paying attention to both the verbal and nonverbal cues in a patient, because they may be saying something to you with more than just their words. And it is important to pay attention to that. Taking care of patients has also taught me to practice compassion, even when it is not easy. People at the hospital are at their very worst. They are very vulnerable and hurting, and sometimes they can make that hurt outward. It has taught me to turn the other cheek and to practice compassion, no matter what. Overall, I am thankful for being part of the culture of being in healthcare. It has taught me many lessons in both life and communication, and taught me about working as a group. Though there are very funky traditions and practices, I still wouldn't take back the 4 years that I spent in this culture.